Many thanks to Pandemonium, Fearless Rection Village servers, Atlas, One Original DayZ servers, Clash Vanilla servers, Sheriff Line, Sauerkraut, Sgt. Pepper's DayZ Invasion server, PGZ servers, Waste Sea, Chernow's Cream Vanilla servers, and Tequila for making this video possible. DayZ 1.24 hasn't just changed simple weapon stats, but entire weapon mechanics, adjusting damage to infected, animals, and even players from many damage sources, while nerfing the deadly Vaiga's damage, increasing the DMR's range, and greatly changing how weapon raising works now in DayZ. So in this video we're going to look over all of the must-know changes to weapons in 1.24. During the dev live stream for 1.24 and in their article, it was mentioned that blunt melee weapons deal extra damage to infected and animals in this patch, but it wasn't mentioned that this also applies to players. Players receive extra damage this patch while changing the damage formula for rubber slugs too, so rubber slugs are included in this shock damage formula that they mention. In the last patch, or possibly the patch before it, I'm not sure, infected received bonus damage from melee attacks, resulting in 20% extra health damage being added to all melee weapon attacks, not just blunt weapons, all melee weapons, including fists. Now in 1.24, the devs have increased how much bonus damage infected take by another 20%, but only on weapons that have a hidden new stat that was added to the game files. This stat has been attached to blunt melee weapons, but not fist attacks, and tier 2 and tier 4 of the crafted tier, even though there's no crafted weapons in the game that are tier 2 or tier 4, but they were also added to rubber shells as well. This bonus damage, like I said, it does 20% extra health damage to infected, 16% extra to all animals, and 10% extra damage to players. However, I believe rubber shells are not working as they should because they do the same damage to players as they did last patch, but somehow they do less damage to infected from last patch. If you combine that with how the devs on stream said that bonus damage won't apply to players, this could mean that this code is currently bugged because blunt weapons were already very strong against players. Now they're going to do 10% more health damage this patch too. It's also worth mentioning that against infected, this 20% bonus damage that we got a few patches ago does not apply to headshots, and nor does the 20% buff that we got this patch either, so only the fire axe can one-shot kill infected still. The sledgehammer cannot one-shot kill infected. Other than the changes to rubber shells this patch, there are many other forms of firearm changes at 1.24, including the heavy Vaiga nerf. In the previous patch, the Vaiga fired 7.5 times a second, now it's 5 times per second, so it's gone from 450 RPM to 300 RPM, a nerf of 33%. While this technically means that the Vaiga will be 33% easier to control during full auto fire, which was almost uncontrollable in the previous patch, it also means that the Vaiga will now do 33% less damage per second in this patch too. Recoil has also been reduced on the Vaiga and changed across all of these weapons too. How these have changed exactly I will go over in a different video. For now though, we can say that the Vaiga has around 50% less recoil with all factors considered compared to last patch, resulting in a net nerf when it comes to damage, but a buff when it comes to recoil. Another nerf comes in the form of the loudness of the SKS, which is now 10% louder, being heard at 2,800 meters away due to the new sounds it has, as you can hear here. When fired, nearly all weapons will start to show visible plumes of smoke many times sooner this patch compared to last patch, but it also fades away faster than last patch too, so we're going to see a lot more smoke, but that smoke is going to stick around for less time, with it still taking the same number of shots to degrade a weapon, so your weapon smoking does not mean it's going to be increasing the amount of durability damage it's taking. Suppressors and bullet impacts now produce less sound to infected, but this is only slightly better than last patch on metal suppressors, and a good amount better compared to the last patch when it comes to the improvised suppressor. So the improvised suppressor, as you can see here, got a nice buff, but the metal suppressors are about the same as they were last patch. Infected will still react to weapon cracks, and if you fire enough, they will beeline to your location too, making it basically the same as last patch, even though my initial tests on this patch showed otherwise. Suppressors still alert infected. And finally, for firearm changes, the DMR got a very nice buff in the form of a zeroing increase. It used to only zero to 250 meters, which was quite low for a rifle, but now has the highest base zeroing of any weapon in DayZ, 1100 meters, putting it more out in front of the SVD in the rankings. As you can see here, the DMR, I think, is the king unless you want a suppressor. If you didn't know, each firearm in DayZ is assigned a length stat in the game files, which determines when it will raise when it's near objects. As you can see here, this weapon is raising, and longer weapons will raise sooner than shorter weapons, with many of these lengths being changed a huge amount in 1.24. If you want to see the exact numbers, you can pause it here to see the increases and decreases and the comparisons from last patch to this one. But to summarize this, the AKs AUGs, FAMAS, especially the AK-74U, and these sawed-off weapons are now much longer in DayZ, so they will raise sooner near walls. It's going to make it more difficult to use these weapons in close combat, with sawed-off weapons seeing the biggest changes here, such as 82% length increase on the sawed-off BK-18, but as you can see in the last patch, this weapon went into the wall, and now it never does go into the wall. On the other hand, the devs have reworked weapon raising to make weapons raise much closer to objects, so they fixed a lot of the hitboxes on weapons and on objects too, such as houses, brick walls, etc. They've made the model tighter to where the collision hitboxes is for where you raise a weapon, so it seems a lot fairer in this patch compared to last patch. A lot of the times in the last patch it didn't make a lot of sense when your weapon was raising, and they've completely removed weapon raising spam that played the game. When your weapon was swaying, it swayed into the path of a wall and it lifted your weapon, and this could cause flickering of the weapon. It was very annoying. However, in order to fix this, where the weapon raises isn't where the weapon will lower. So as you can see, the weapon raises at this point, but it won't lower again until it gets back to this point. This is how they solve the problem. While this does fix the weapon sway flickering issue, this makes weapon raising a lot more inconsistent compared to last patch, and it gets worse when you consider stance length changes of weapons. If you didn't know, in different stances, weapons change length. So crouching, for example, makes your weapon slightly longer, and therefore, if you crouch when you're right next to a wall when you're standing, it will lift your weapon up, as you can see here. The problem is, with this patch, if you stand back up, it's not going to lower the weapon because the lowering and the raising points are at different values, and therefore, you're going to see some inconsistencies here too. Combining this with weapon length net increases this patch, weapon raising will occur more in close quarters, and it will feel slightly inconsistent compared to last patch. On the plus side though, we won't have this weapon raising sway spam, the weapon raising will seem much tighter to the environment, and bayonets have had their lengths reduced, but their weight has been increased. To add to this, all of these weapons here have had their weights adjusted, with the shovels being much lighter now, several kilograms lighter, and the broom going from like 4 kilograms to 0.5. I plan to make a detailed melee weapon guide in the near future, so I'll update you guys on the extra damage to players if it's a bug or not, and also rubber shells to see if that's a bug, with a complete breakdown to what appears to be a very complicated melee weapon damage system. But sooner than that, I will go over all of the changes to 1.24 when it comes to recoil. For now, the biggest weapon change this patch is the Vakir and its 30 round magazine. Check it out here. Let me know your opinions on these changes below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.